Why was it not reported? Because Goldman Sachs, in conjunction with the Greek government, hid billions and billions of debt. Now, this is the problem. The problem is that you've got bankers like Goldman Sachs and Wall Street colluding with the Greek government to falsify data. To rectify the problem, the Greek government is sent in their intelligence agency to investigate what's going on, and they've hired a former Goldman Sachs banker to head up this particular investigation. So they've got Stockholm Syndrome. They're being held captive by corrupt bankers on Wall Street, and they're blaming themselves. They're beating themselves for somebody else's corruption. That's the corruption on Wall Street. Now, you have to laugh at this ridiculous situation because here you've got two Greek analysts saying that, well, we should pay more taxes. We need to get rid of the black market. And yet Goldman Sachs, who advised them on this corruption last year, paid less than 1% in taxes. Goldman Sachs doesn't pay any taxes. So to point out Goldman Sachs Christmas bonuses, you're going to ask the Greek people to pay more taxes? Do the Greek people get compensated from Goldman Sachs? Do they own stock in Goldman Sachs? This is absurd. Why are you selling your countrymen down the road? And to say there's no alternative is false. There's insurrection is a possibility. Why not get rid of this government? They're totally corrupt.
Could Greece maybe go to the IMF for help, or would that be even worse?
Jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. I mean, the IMF is Goldman Sachs. The IMF, World Bank, Goldman Sachs, Wall Street, they're all commingled. They're all working together. This has been now obvious since the credit collapse starting 2 years ago. As Warren Buffett said, when the tide goes out, you see who's not wearing a bathing suit. Now, as the credit crunch has basically deprived these countries and these companies in these countries of credit, we're seeing who is not capable of dealing in the credit crunch. And Greece is an obvious example, but so too is Spain and the other so-called pig nations. We also see it in Iceland, which is having a vote on March 6th whether or not to appease the financial terrorists on Wall Street, who did the same thing to Iceland. But here's the thing about France and Germany. Germany is the #2 exporter in the world. They don't mind if the euro goes down. So they're using Greece as a whipping boy. They'll say, look at Greece. We need to go in there and reform Greece. Look at bad Greece. Oh, the euro's in trouble. But they benefit hugely by the depression in the issue, is it? Because
at a time of high unemployment at home and coming out of a recession, how do the likes of France and Germany justify to their people that they need to give more money to Greece? That's at the crux of it, isn't it?
Well, they're going to jawbone this issue all day long, but not take any action because they know that the professional speculators are driving down the euro. The short position, which are the negative bets on the euro, are at a historic high. Billions and billions of euros and dollars are bet on the euro's failure. Chief beneficiary of this is going to be Germany, who's a huge export market. So they're just using basically Greece, and the poor people in Greece are losing their jobs and have to go through austerity measures. It has absolutely nothing to do with fundamental reform of that economy. They're basically a sausage going through the Wall Street banking machine, and they need to ban Goldman Sachs from doing business in their country. They need to ban Wall Street firms from doing any business in their country. Until you get rid of the financial terrorists in your country is going to continue to lose jobs, unemployment is going to go up, and the quality of life is going to continue to go down because you're being held captive by financial terrorists. Don't you get it? Get rid of them. Or maybe you like being abused by terrorists. That could be your thing. You know, a lot of people enjoy that kind of sadomasochism. That might be something you're into. But if you're not into that, get rid of the financial terrorists from your country.
Είμαστε βιτσιόζοι, αυτή είναι η αλήθεια. Πρέπει να το ομολογήσουμε. Γουστάρουμε να μας ταλαιπωρούν και οι ξένοι οικονομικοί τρομοκράτες και οι Έλληνες οικονομικοί τρομοκράτες και οι κυβερνήσεις και πολλά άλλα. Το έχουμε αυτό σαν Έλληνες. Και μάλιστα το αποζητούμε. Είναι φοβερό. Λοιπόν, ήταν πολύ ωραίο το
ίσως αυτό το βίντεο έδωσε εξήγησε πολλά από αυτά που βλέπουμε κάθε βράδυ στα δελτία ειδήσεων και δεν μπορούμε να τα κατανοήσουμε και να τα εξηγήσουμε.
Αλλά αυτά τα βίντεο που θα δείτε όταν επιστρέψουμε, όπου πλέον θα πάμε σε θέματα, θα συνεχίσουμε με την οικονομική κρίση με ένα φοβερό βίντεο. Μετά θα πάμε σε θέματα τηλεόρασης από το network. Απίστευτο και αυτό. Και θα κλείσουμε έτσι σήμερα με μια άλλη διάθεση, με θέματα που μπορεί να αφορούν τη ζωή του κάθε ανθρώπου. Νομίζω θα δημιουργήσουμε μια μαγική ατμόσφαιρα σήμερα στο διαφορετικό ράδιο Αρβίλα της χρονιάς που γίνεται κάθε φορά την Μεγάλη Εβδομάδα, στην τελευταία εκπομπή της Μεγάλης Εβδομάδας. Και όλα αυτά μόλις γυρίσουμε από τις διαφημίσεις, μείνετε μαζί μας. Λοιπόν, επιστροφή στο Radio Arvyla. Πραγματικά ευχαριστούμε μέσα από την καρδιά μας για τα απίστευτα πολλά μηνύματα που στέλνετε σήμερα και για όλα αυτά που γράφετε και ειλικρινά χαιρόμαστε πάρα πολύ. Είμαστε σε αυτό το διαφορετικό Radio Arvyla, το τρίτο μέχρι στιγμής μέσα σε αυτά τα 3 χρόνια που εκπομπή είναι στον αέρα. Βέβαια, αν βάλουμε και τα δεκεμβριανά επεισόδια τότε, αλλά θα εξαιρέσουμε εκείνα. Και είμαστε στο θέμα οικονομική κρίση. Δείτε τώρα ένα βίντεο από το Zeitgeist, το ντοκιματέρ. Επαναλαμβάνουμε τα ντοκιματέρ, αν θέλετε να τα πάρετε να τα δείτε ολόκληρα. Δεν είναι ανάγκη δεν σας τα προτείνουμε ότι με όλα μπορεί να συμφωνήσετε. Απλά είναι τροφή για σκέψη. Zeitgeist 1 και 2. Lucky People Center, αυτό που θα δούμε μετά στη συνέχεια. Την ταινία Network που μιλάει για την τηλεόραση, εκπληκτική προφητική ταινία από το 1976. Και την ταινία Larry Fleet. Αυτά είναι σήμερα. Αν είχαμε περισσότερο χρόνο, ίσως θα κάναμε καλύτερα πράγματα. Αλλά παιδιά, με το καθημερινό Radio Arvyla αυτά μπορέσαμε να κάνουμε. Sorry δηλαδή, πραγματικά. Αυτό είναι ένα εκπληκτικό βίντεο για όλη την απάτη που λέγεται νομισματικό σύστημα και τραπεζικό σύστημα. Ένα σύστημα το οποίο είναι στημένο, έχει άμεση σχέση με την οικονομική κρίση. Είναι στημένο, καταδικασμένο μάλλον, να οδηγεί τους ανθρώπους, τις μάζες των ανθρώπων στη φτώχεια και στο να είναι εχμάλωτοι των χρεών, το να κρατάει τις χώρες, ολόκληρες τις χώρες εχμάλωτες με τα χρέη. Εξηγεί αυτό το βίντεο πώς τα χρήματα φτιάχνονται από το πουθενά, από αέρα κοπανιστό, και πραγματικά έχει ένα καταπληκτικό παράδειγμα στο τέλος για το πώς ένας εφάνταστος πολίτης στις ΗΠΑ πήγε στα δικαστήρια και με ποια επιχειρηματολογία πήγε στα δικαστήρια την τράπεζα που ήταν να του πάρει το σπίτι του γιατί δεν είχε να αποπληρώσει το δάνειο και πώς δικαιώθηκε τελικά. Ένα εκπληκτικό παράδειγμα. Εδώ θέλουμε ίσως λίγο περισσότερο την προσοχή σας. Δηλαδή, είναι λίγο, κάναμε ό,τι μπορούσαμε, αλλά πραγματικά αξίζει τον κόπο. Δείτε τι ακριβώς συμβαίνει.
In a world where 1% of the population owns 40% of the planet's wealth, in a world where 34,000 children die every single day from poverty and preventable diseases, and where 50% of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day, one thing is clear: something is very wrong. And whether we are aware of it or not, the lifeblood of all of our established institutions, and thus society itself, is money. Therefore, understanding this institution of monetary policy is critical to understanding why our lives are the way they are. Unfortunately, economics is often viewed with confusion and boredom. Endless streams of financial jargon coupled with intimidating mathematics quickly deters people from attempts at understanding it. However, the fact is, the complexity associated with the financial system is a mere mask, designed to conceal one of the most socially paralyzing structures humanity has ever endured. The United States government decides it needs some money, so it calls up the Federal Reserve and requests, say, $10 billion. The Fed replies saying, sure, we'll buy $10 billion in government bonds from you. So the government takes some pieces of paper, paints some official-looking designs on them, and calls them treasury bonds. Then it puts a value on these bonds to the sum of $10 billion and sends them over to the Fed. In turn, the people at the Fed draw up a bunch of impressive pieces of paper themselves, only this time calling them Federal Reserve notes, also designating a value of $10 billion to the Fed. The Fed then takes these notes and trades them for the bonds. Once this exchange is complete, the government then takes the $10 billion in Federal Reserve notes and deposits it into a bank account. And upon this deposit, the paper notes officially become legal tender money, adding $10 billion to the U.S. money supply. And there it is. $10 billion in new money has been created. Of course, this example is a generalization, for, in reality, this transaction would occur electronically, with no paper used at all. In fact, only 3% of the U.S. money supply exists in physical currency. The other 97% essentially exists in computers alone. Now, government bonds are, by design, instruments of debt. And when the Fed purchases these bonds, with money it essentially created out of thin air, the government is actually promising to pay back that money to the Fed. In other words, the money was created out of debt.
The real deception is when we distort the value of money. When we create money out of thin air, we have no savings, yet there's so-called capital So my question boils down to this. How in the world can we expect to solve the problems of inflation?
Of course, it can't. The fractional reserve system of monetary expansion is inherently inflationary. For the act of expanding the money supply without there being a proportional expansion of goods and services in the economy will always debase a currency. If this reality of inherent and perpetual inflation seems absurd and economically self-defeating, hold that thought, for absurdity is an understatement in regard to how our financial system really operates. For in our financial system, money is debt, and debt is money. Here is a chart of the U.S. money supply from 1950 to 2006.